In this video, I'm going to share my recipe for these milk chocolate chip cookies that are chewy on the inside and crispy on the outside. And to start off, we're going to brown our butter. So I have a ceramic skillet here, and I'm going to add 1 cup of unsalted butter, and 1 cup is equivalent to 2 sticks of butter. And we're going to warm the skillet on medium heat. Now, the exact cook time will vary. I tested this on an electric stove, and once the butter melted, it took approximately 5 to 8 minutes to get brown butter. Ultimately, though, once the butter melts, you do want to constantly stir it around to prevent it from sticking, as well as ensure that the butter cooks evenly. And then once it's done, you'll start to see it turn a brownish color as you see on the screen, and you'll see a layer of foam form. At that point, you'll want to remove the skillet from the heat. And then what I'm going to do now is transfer it into this small bowl that I have. And once we get that brown butter into the small bowl, what we're going to do is just allow it to rest. And I'm going to let it rest for around 10 to 20 minutes. You don't want to combine it with the other ingredients immediately because the butter will be too hot and you'll risk scorching the other ingredients as well. And I'm just going to turn off the heat on the burner. And I'm just going to give it a bit of a stir because there's a lot of milk solids in the butter and I want to spread those around. And then once I do that, I'm going to move on to combining the dry ingredients. So now I'm going to add to this large 3-quart mixing bowl 1 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour. And you want to ensure your flour is spooned and leveled. Optionally, you can weigh it as well. And now I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of baking soda. This will help the cookies to spread once they're in the oven. And now I'm adding a 1/2 teaspoon of iodized salt as well as a teaspoon of cardamom. And I'm going to give everything a good stir until it's well combined. And then once everything is well combined, now at this point in the video, about 15 minutes have passed, so I'm going to move on to combining the wet ingredients. So I'm going to move that bowl out of the way, and I have a separate bowl here for my wet ingredients. And in this 3-quart mixing bowl, I'm going to add the brown butter. So we're going to ease that on in there, and I'm using my plastic spatula to ensure we get all of those milk solids because that's where all of the flavor and the brown butter lies. And now I'm going to add 1 cup of white granulated sugar. And we're just going to give it a stir until it's well combined. And you want to stir it until it reaches the consistency that you see on the screen now. And once we do that, I'm going to add 4 extra large egg yolks. I've tested this with 1 whole egg, 2 whole eggs, as well as 1 whole egg and 1 egg yolk. I find you get the best results with all egg yolks as it allows for a more tender texture inside of the cookies. And you don't want to mix it for longer than 15 minutes because if you do, you risk having the butter seize up, then it won't melt properly in the oven, which will prevent the cookies from spreading as they should. Now, most recipes will just have you add brown sugar, but I prefer using pure molasses, one because it gives the cookies a more pronounced caramelly note. Also, the pure molasses adds more moisture to the cookies, which gives them their soft and chewy texture. So after stirring that together until it's well combined with the butter and the sugar and the eggs, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and I'm going to give that a stir as well until it's combined with the other ingredients. Now for the final wet ingredient, the problem with brown butter is that it's made up of 20 to 25% water. So when you're browning it, much of that water evaporates. So I'm adding 2 tablespoons of whole milk to the wet ingredients, and this will help to make up for the moisture that was lost when that water evaporates, which will help the cookies to spread properly in the oven. So now that all the wet ingredients are combined, I'm going to move on to the next step. And I'm going to bring back the bowl with the dry ingredients. And what I like to do, everyone does this differently. I like to add the wet ingredients to the dry ingredients. That's my personal preference. Some folks like to do it the other way. It doesn't matter. It'll all come out the same in the end. And I'm just going to fold the wet and dry ingredients together until they're just combined. You don't want to overwork the ingredients because that will lead to gluten development, which will lead to tough cookies that won't spread out properly. And now what I'm adding is 3/4 cups of milk chocolate chips as well as 3/4 cups of semi-sweet chocolate chips. I like to split the difference by using both as the richness of the milk chocolate chips provide a nice contrast to the rustic flavor of the semi-sweet chocolate chips. And I just finished folding those chocolate chips together with the cookie dough. So I'm going to move on to the next step in the process, which is placing the cookie dough onto our cookie sheet. So I lined my cookie sheet with parchment paper. It's optional. You can also grease the cookie sheet. I do recommend using parchment paper as that will prevent the bottom of the cookies from sticking to the cookie sheet and burning. And I'm using a 2 tablespoon size cookie scoop for this as well. So what I'm going to do is place the cookie dough in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 minutes. And once it's done, I'm going to remove the cookies from the oven and I'm going to allow them to cool for around 10 minutes. And by letting the cookies rest, that will allow time for the cookies to firm up. If you try to pick them up too soon, then you risk having them just fall apart. In terms of servings, assuming you use a 2 tablespoon cookie scoop, you should be able to get at least 18 cookies out of this recipe, and no chilling is required before baking this cookie dough. And there you have it. If you would like to see more of these recipes, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.